Well, hello, friends, and thank you for joining me on this Thursday edition of the Daily Connection. It's a time when we get together in the Word. More importantly, the Word gets into us. So today we're focused on John chapter 15, verse 12, where Jesus gives the disciples this. This is my command. Love one another as I have loved you. That's something of a summary statement if you think about it. We started off back in verse 9, as the Father has loved me, I've also loved you, remain in my love. He talked about how obedience was a demonstration of that love. Now in verse 12, he's kind of come down and said, hey, here's the command. This is the command I'm giving you. Love one another just as I have loved you. So the standard is applied in that sense. And what I mean by that is this. He's saying just as. He's meaning that the degree of love you're to have for one another should be directly correspondent to the degree of love I've demonstrated toward you. What's fascinating is it's not the first time that Jesus has given this command. And perhaps we go back and we look at that in John 13 for just a moment. Verse 34, he says this, I give you a new command. Love one another just as I have loved you. You are also to love one another. So there he goes again, saying, here's the new command, love one another in the same standard, just as I have loved you. Of course, if you know John 13, you know that we're kind of just coming out of the moment where Jesus washed the disciples' feet. So that might help us to, in some sense, to understand that if that statement was made there, then maybe it was the actions that he took, which were very demeaning for him in terms of how the culture viewed it. You know, he had to lower himself to a place that was typically reserved for a bond slave, if you will, an activity, the washing of the feet. He said, do you know what I've done for you? You know, you call me master and Lord, and you're right, that's what I am. You know, if I was willing to submit myself and humble myself to such a place and perform such an act for you, then you should do the same for one another. So if we're thinking about, hey, what's the standard? I mean, what does that look like practically? Well, we know that love for one another is going to be a love that serves others. And that goes right in line with loving your neighbor. You know, we are to serve others. We're not to look for them to serve us. Instead, we are to take the initiative to serve others. That's how we love one another. And of course, if you put both of these, both the John 13 and the John 15, 12 text back into the context of the upper room discourse, you know he's in the process of leading up to the crucifixion. And so to love one another like Jesus loved us is to love sacrificially. It's the willingness to lay down. And of course, he's going to say that in verse 13. You know, and so we love sacrificially. And then let's broaden the scope out a little bit. Let's think about the ministry of Jesus, the various ways he went about interacting with his disciples to show them love. One of the ways that he would show up as, you know, you've heard it said or you've seen this happen, but. And so in that sense, the love of Jesus was something of a confrontational love. You say, well, that doesn't make sense, Brent. Love and confrontation? Well, it does if you look at the life of Jesus. He was confronting the lies that had been told to them. He was confronting the misunderstandings that they had about how you're to love God and how you're to love one another. And so to love one another like Jesus loved is to be willing to confront people in error. It's the willingness to speak truth in love. We talk about that sometimes. We've got to be willing to do that, whether it's to correct an error or whether it's in some cases to confirm what they're doing well. And in some cases, the love that Jesus had for his disciples was a confirming love. He would confirm, you know, you did well in this. You did a good job. So he would confirm that you are indeed acting and living in a way that is according to my will. And, you know, and we can go on and on. It was a purifying love. You know, all these different things we can talk about in terms of the practical application of that. And we need to be sensitive to that, because if Jesus was calling his disciples in John 15:12 to love one another, and he was doing it through the force, and it is a force. He said, this is my command. Love one another just as I have loved you. So we've got the command, we're obligated. We've got the standard. We can't just go about it in our own way, shape, form, or fashion. We must abide by the standard that he put in place, by the way that he loved the disciples. That's the way that we are to love one another. And you know what happens when we see that level of love demonstrated toward brothers and sisters in Christ? We see the church become this beautiful city on a hill that provides light to everyone around. We see individual believers become this wonderful lamp that's lit, set up on a shelf. That way it provides light to everyone. In other words, we become the church that draws people to the wonderful message of the gospel and the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. We become the church that Christ died for, the bride that he's preparing to be reunited to when we love one another. So understand today, friends, that it's not a suggestion made. It's a command given with a set standard to be applied, which is we are to love one another just like he loved his disciples and he loves us. Well, I hope your week is going well. Finish strong. Live sent. Love others. Love God. And in all that, we bring glory to our Father, and nothing can bring greater joy to our heart. Remember, live sent.